Hey guys, welcome to the podcast today. We're talking about body types today, okay? So this is probably a topic that you've heard of. You may have even heard the terms, but I want to help you understand it a little bit better today of how understanding your body and your body type can really help you determine what's the best type of meal or nutrition that you should have and the best type of sport that you might be predisposed to doing well at, or even understanding like why you do prefer certain movements, certain types of training programs, or certain types of foods or cravings and things like that. So let's dive in. Okay, so we got three different body types here, okay? So there's an ectomorph, mesomorph, and an endomorph, okay? So I'm going to go through describing each of these, and just to get you a better idea of what they are, what that person would look like, what kind of nutrition helps them most, like usually what they function best at. This is not prescriptive, but it can be a starting point for where you're at to help you understand, okay, if I can start here, I can work with that, and I can kind of play with my portions a little bit to see what I like best. Because every single body is different. Everyone's body is different, and this can't be prescriptive for every single person because everyone's specific goals are different. Everyone's regular activity is different, or access to different foods is different. So, but these can be a good starting point for you. So with an ectomorph, usually these are the really thin people, okay? Or at least they start out really thin in life. And so they're generally lean, smaller in frame, pretty skinny, have thinner limbs. Okay, so even if like as someone gets older, like a father develops a gut or something, but he's really skinny in general. But an ectomorph will usually have a pretty fast metabolism and tolerate carbs pretty well. And because of that, they're more inclined to do better with a little bit higher carbohydrate diet. But often at times an ectomorph isn't going to do as good on having a higher fat intake. And so because of that, someone who is naturally thin, has thinner limbs, is pretty skinny, struggles to put on weight, things like that. An ectomorph may not do as well on things like a keto diet, where it's like really high fat and very low carb. You might feel like you're having carb cravings all the time, or you're just really low energy or struggling like that. Doesn't mean that it's impossible for an ectomorph to do really well on a keto type diet. For example, there's been a lot of endurance athletes who've changed to a keto style diet where they have like very low carbohydrate and they have very high fat intake and a moderate protein intake, and that improves their performance for long distance running. So it doesn't mean that every ectomorph will do better in a high carb and a little bit lower fat diet, but in general, ectomorphs will probably feel a little bit better, will thrive a little bit more by having some carbohydrates in their diet. And so what would that look like? If you're going off of like a base of like 2 portions of protein, 2 portions of carbs, 2 portions of fats, and 2 portions of veggies every day for men per meal. So that's like 6 of each per day, and then 1 of each per meal for women. Usually you want to, like for an ectomorph male, instead of having 2 of carbs and 2 of fats, you might exchange one of those fats for a carb. So you end up having 3 carbs and 1 fat in one meal. So per meal, a male would end up having 2 portions of protein, 3 portions of carbs, and 1 portion of fat. And then of course having a couple portions of veggies in there is super great for overall health. And then for women, decreasing the fats also to have a little bit more carbs. So kind of like decreasing by 1 portion or a half portion of the fats and adding that to the carbohydrates is going to help an ectomorph feel better. And ectomorphs often thrive more at endurance type events, endurance type sports. They're not going to do the best in the extremely explosive type sports. But there is still like a lot of ectomorphs who do have good fast twitch fibers, which makes them more explosive. But they'll be better at things like basketball, where it has a lot of explosive movements. So it's like more of an endurance type sport with a lot of explosive efforts. And so, but like a basketball player who's an ectomorph can do really well, but an ectomorph might not thrive at like powerlifting types, stuff where they need to have a significant amount of muscle mass. It would take a long time, which is not impossible, but it takes a lot of effort. and time and maintenance with nutrition to be able to, for an ectomorph to put on a significant amount of muscle. It is completely possible. It just takes more time, commitment, and often have to eat more calories than an ectomorph is used to, because ectomorphs often have kind of a lower appetite than many. They'll have to have smaller meals, more sprinkled throughout the day, because it's hard for them to eat a lot at any one time. And so let's move on to the next one. The next one is a mesomorph. Okay, these are more of the athletic build, kind of athletic looking, medium-sized frame. They seem to gain muscle and stay relatively lean fairly easily. If they want to get lean, they can. They can get out of shape if things are out of balance pretty easily. So their metabolism is not as fast as an ectomorph. Like if a mesomorph doesn't take care of their fitness and their nutrition, they can definitely get super overweight, but generally they have a little bit more muscle mass than an ectomorph, and they have a medium-sized frame, and they can get in shape relatively easily when they want to. And so with good discipline. So balance is the name of the game for a mesomorph. Kind of having that 2 of each portion of each macronutrient is going to be great, or 1 of each macronutrient per meal for women is great. And they're going to excel at sports like, weightlifting or really explosive type sports where you need a mixture of endurance and explosiveness. And so that can be anything from like American football to football like soccer, or even things like wrestling, or other physique type sports or fighting type sports. Like a mesomorph will do really well in these, where an ectomorph will do great at primarily endurance type sports. A mesomorph will do great in more explosive, or a mixture of explosive and endurance. Doesn't mean that you can't train to be better at one of those, but a mesomorph will do great at kind of having a mix of everything. And so an endomorph is someone who has a larger frame, is heavier than most, have a little bit slower metabolism, and they don't necessarily tolerate carbs as well. And so with a endomorph, a lot of times an endomorph naturally, just as a personality, they don't move as much. They don't move unless they have to, or they're more inclined to sit and chill. Where an ectomorph, you might see they have like a nervous tick. They're always bouncing their leg, or they just want to get up and move really often. It's going to be more high energy. An endomorph is going to be pretty chill. They're not going to be about moving all the time. And they'll do better on a little bit higher fat and a lower carb. And so like per meal for men, like 2 palms of protein, 2 portions of protein, 1 portion of carb, and 3 portions of fats can be super good for an endomorph. And like for a female, like 1 portion of protein, a half portion of a carb, and 2 full portions of fats can be super great for a female. And that doesn't mean that's prescriptive. Again, it really depends on how you're feeling and what your preference is and what your overall goals are. But an endomorph will often do better on a little bit higher fat and lower carbohydrate diet, keeping the protein relatively the same across the board. And endomorphs will love just like the explosive type training. Like endomorphs usually dominate in kind of strength lifts, like powerlifting, or something that's short bursts, something where they can just be coordinated and really good without having to move super far long distances, so an endomorph will dominate in those types of things. They're really good at just the being strong and being a steady foundation there. So that's just a little bit about body types there. I hope that gives you an understanding of like, okay, where do I fit in? Like, think about it. How do I naturally feel? How do I naturally fit in? Am I an ectomorph, mesomorph, or an endomorph? So what kind of nutrition might work better for me? What can I do differently than what I'm doing now? What type of training might like to train or might like to try out? What sport might be fun for me to do? These can be things that you could check out today and think about. So I hope that this episode is beneficial for you. Consider what body type you are, and this is not prescriptive of any of us. Not trying to put any of us in a box, and we can always train our way into like more or less, body size or muscle mass or anything like that. But overall, having a better understanding of our body, having more awareness of what works best for us can be really, really beneficial for our health journey. So I hope this podcast was beneficial for you today, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.